TheCraftyGemini, and I'm back with day 5 of my 12 days of last-minute DIY gifts video series. Now in this video tutorial, I'm going to teach you how to make my Cinch-It-Up Flat Mat. It's another fun, quick, and easy practical project that I'm sure you're going to enjoy. For this project, we're going to be using both quilting cottons and some strips of stretch knit fabric. That's going to save us a ton of time and make this a really quick and easy make. Now, I can whip up one of these in about 5 or 6 minutes. So once you have a few under your belt, I definitely encourage you to use the math and the dimensions that I go over in the video tutorial to make them in bigger or smaller sizes. Now let's go over the supplies that we need so we can jump right into making one. So for this size mat, you can see it's nice and little, compact, but you can still fit quite a bit in here. We are going to be using a circle template that measures 9 3/4 inches. So if you have a saucer or plate that's anywhere between 9 and 10 inches will work fine. You're going to get one this size. If you want to make it bigger or smaller, just adjust your measurements accordingly. I'm going to be using this trash little bin here that I have that's 9 3/4 in diameter. So I am able to use 2 square pieces of quilting cotton that measure 10 inches by 10 inches. So if you have these in your stash, this is going to be the perfect stash busting project. We're going to place it on top, and I'm doing 2 layers at a time, and I'm just going to trace around the circle. Then we cut around the circle to get 2 identical circle pieces. Now we have our 2 circles. The next step is to cut out this little band here that's going to create the casing to be able to cinch it up. And this is cut out of a stretch knit fabric because it doesn't fray and it has good stretch to it. But we need to figure out what size we need to cut the length of this strip to, so it's time to do some math. Math was always one of my favorite subjects in school, but if it wasn't for you, no worries. I'm going to walk you through it, and using this formula, you'll be able to create the same little cinch mat, bigger or smaller. So first, the circumference of this circle is what we need to figure out because the band goes all the way around the exterior edge here of the circle, the circumference. We know that the formula for circumference is 2 pi r, meaning 2 times pi times r, r being the radius. Now I know that the diameter, meaning from one outside edge of the circle to the other on this, is 9 3/4 because I measured that on my template piece. Now 9 3/4 is the diameter. From the center of the circle to any outside edge is what we call the radius. So if this is the diameter all the way across, the radius is going to be half of it. So here I have diameter divided by 2 is the radius. So if my diameter is 9 3/4, I need to divide this by 2 to get the radius. And this is going to give you about 4 7/8, so 4.875. Now we can plug in r here. So far we have circumference equals 2 times pi, which we'll leave it at 3.14 for this problem, and then times r, which is 4.875. And when we calculate this, we're just going to multiply across. So these 2 multiplied will give me 6.28, and this multiplied by 4.875 is going to give me something like 30, a little over 30 and a half, like 30.6. So this right here goes back up here, and this is the circumference of this circle. Now that we have the circumference, we can use this as the length of our strip that we need to cut. So I want you to cut your band of stretch knit fabric to create the casing part at 1.5 inches wide by 30 inches in length. And it doesn't have to be exact. You can round up or round down. I just want you to use the true circumference as the minimum length that you cut, because you actually will end up using less, but I'd rather you have a little bit more that you can trim down than have you cut a strip that's not quite long enough. Once you've cut your strip to 1.5 inches wide by the length of whatever the circumference measurement was that you determined, I want you to take it to your iron and ironing board and press the entire strip in half lengthwise with wrong sides touching. Now let's take both of our circle pieces and our little strip over to the sewing machine. All right, so we're going to take one of our circles, we're going to set our machine to a straight stitch, and we're going to use about 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now you may be wondering, why am I using a straight stitch if I'm stitching on stretch knits? Well, this is not a project that anybody's going to be wearing. It's not going to get that much wear and tear in the stretch, so your stitches will be fine to not pop out. If you don't want to use a straight stitch, feel free to use whatever else, zigzag or lightning stitch that you want to use. I'm going to place the raw edge of my strip along the raw edge of my circle, and I'm going to lightly stretch, not super hard, okay? You don't want it to cinch up the bag too much because you're gonna pull it with the drawstring anyways. So really close to the edge. This one is more like a basting one, so we can even lengthen our stitch length a little bit. You can pull on the fabric just a little, and by pulling on the fabric, I mean just the knit. You don't want to stretch out the circle because a round edge is all cut on the bias and you can really distort the size of it. When I come back around, I'll just overlap them, and right where they're going to touch, I cut the top one. And then continue here. All right, so here's what we have. Notice that it's not super cinched in, it's just a little bit lifted up. That is about as much stretching as I want you to do. Now we're gonna take the next circle and we're gonna place this pretty side face down. Okay, if you have a print on your fabric, pretty side face down so that the casing is sandwiched in between the two layers. Now for this, you don't even have to really put any marks or anything. Just line up your circles, and if you cut them equally, you shouldn't have a problem here. But now we're gonna use a proper 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. And I'm just stitching through all 3 layers. So because the knit is kind of lifting it up, all you're gonna do is stretch it out to make it flat as you stitch the top circle into place. And when we work our way around, we're gonna leave a small opening. And by small, I mean really small, like 1.5 inches. The smaller the opening, the easier it's gonna be to close it off in the end, but you still want it to be large enough to flip right side out. Alright, so I backstitched at the beginning and at the end, and I have just this little teensy opening. It might be a little too small for me, but I'll make it work. If your seam allowance is bigger than 1/4 of an inch, you may want to take pinking shears and trim off some from the seam allowance. But you're going to reach in here and flip the whole thing right side out. Then we want to give our little mat a press on both sides. Then we'll find our opening, tuck in the raw edge, and fold it over. You can then hand stitch this opening shut, or you can head over to the sewing machine and stitch really close to this outside edge. And after our opening is stitched shut, the last step is to run whatever you're going to use as a drawstring through here. So you can use cording, ribbon. I just cut another strip at 1.5 inches wide by the same 30 inches that I had because I cut it doubled up. So because this is knit and it's a jersey, it's just going to roll on itself. So if I just tug on it, and these were cut along the crosswise grain, so they're really stretchy, they just roll on themselves and create this perfect little cording. So we're going to grab a safety pin, insert it to one end, and I'm just going to come in the casing on one side, go all the way around, and come out on the other. Here, I like to leave 2 long tails and kind of open up the mat at the widest point that I would open it when I'm using it. And so for me, it'll probably be there because I like to have a little edge that will keep the contents inside. And so then you can decide how long or how short to keep the ends. Remember that when you cinch it in, the tails will obviously get longer. So I think I'll just cut both of these somewhere there. I'm going to tie a knot on the end, or you can just tie them both right off together, so they don't run the risk of getting in the casing for you. So I'm going to pull these shut, and there it is. You can put whatever you want inside your little flat mat and cinch it up. And that's it for this video tutorial. I hope you enjoyed learning how to make my little cinch-it-up flat mats, and I hope that you will give this a try in a variety of different sizes. If you enjoyed the tutorial, make sure to hit it with a thumbs up. Leave me a comment below. Let me know what you plan to do with the little cinch-it-up flat mats. We all love to get new inspiration from other readers and viewers, and I also love to get more ideas. So thanks again for watching. Remember to share this with your friends across different social media sites, and don't forget to click the subscribe button. That way you won't miss out on any of my upcoming videos. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you tomorrow for day 6.